Captain Jake Morrison walked across the bridge of his ship. The stars outside the windows looked different here at the edge of known space. His crew had been traveling for 3 months to reach this place. They were looking for something that might not even exist. "Captain, we're getting some strange readings," said Lieutenant Amy Carter from her station. She was the ship's expert on alien history and old civilizations. Her face looked worried as she stared at her screen. Jake moved closer to look at what she had found. The sensors were picking up energy signatures from a dead planet below them. But these readings were unlike anything they had seen before. The energy was very old but also very powerful. "How old are we talking about?" Jake asked. Amy checked her instruments again. "At least 10 million years, maybe more. But Captain, there's something else. The energy pattern suggests this wasn't a natural death for this world." Dr. Kevin Walsh joined them at the sensor station. He was the mission's historian and had spent years studying dead civilizations. His experience with ancient ruins made him valuable on missions like this. "What do you mean by not natural?" Kevin asked Amy. "The planet was deliberately destroyed. Someone used weapons to kill everything on it. But the strange thing is, there are no bodies, no remains, nothing. It's like every living thing just vanished." Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. In all his years exploring space, he had never heard of anything like this. "Take us down to the surface. We need to see this for ourselves." The landing party consisted of Jake, Amy, Kevin, and Commander Lisa Brooks, who was Jake's second in command. They wore their protective suits as they walked across the dead planet's surface. The ground was covered in a strange gray dust that seemed to absorb light. Amy's scanner beeped as they walked. "I'm detecting some kind of structure about 2 kilometers ahead. It's partially buried but still intact." The structure turned out to be a massive building made of materials they didn't recognize. The walls were covered in symbols and writing that looked like no language they had ever seen, but Amy's translation computer was slowly making sense of some of the symbols. "This is incredible," she said as they entered the building. "These symbols are a record of some kind. They're talking about a species called the Vorthak." Kevin set up his equipment to record everything they found. The walls were covered in what looked like historical records, but the more they translated, the more disturbed they became. "Jake, you need to see this," Lisa called from deeper in the building. She was standing in front of a wall covered in detailed pictures and symbols. The pictures showed scenes of destruction on a massive scale, entire planets being destroyed, civilizations being wiped out completely, and millions of beings dying. But the most disturbing part was that the pictures seemed to celebrate these destructions. Amy worked with her computer to translate the text around the pictures. Her face grew pale as she read. "These aren't just records of war. They're like trophies. The Vorthak were keeping score of how many species they killed." "What do you mean, keeping score?" Jake asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. According to this, the Vorthak made a game out of destroying other intelligent species. They would compete to see who could wipe out a civilization faster. They kept detailed records of their methods and their success rates. Kevin found another section of the building that contained what looked like a massive library. The walls were covered in data storage devices that were still somehow functioning after millions of years. As they downloaded the information, the true horror of what they had found became clear. "Captain," Kevin said in a shaky voice, "according to these records, the Vorthak destroyed over 1 million different intelligent species. They didn't just conquer them or enslave them. They completely erased them from existence." Lisa was studying tactical displays that showed the Vorthak's methods. They were incredibly efficient. They would study a species for years, learn everything about them, and then strike at exactly the right moment to cause maximum destruction. They eliminated entire civilizations in a matter of days. Amy continued translating more of the records. Each new section revealed worse horrors. The Vorthak hadn't just killed other species for resources or territory. They had done it for entertainment. They considered other intelligent life to be nothing more than insects to be crushed. "There's something else," Amy said quietly. "These records suggest that the Vorthak didn't die out. They just left. When younger species started appearing in the galaxy, they retreated to the galactic core to wait." Jake felt like the air had been sucked out of his lungs. "Wait for what?" "For the right time to start again. According to this, they're still out there, somewhere in the center of the galaxy. They've been waiting for the current civilizations to develop enough to be worth destroying. The team spent hours downloading every piece of information they could find. The Vorthak records were incredibly detailed, showing not just what they had done, but how they had done it. Their technology was far beyond anything that existed in the current galaxy. "We need to get this information back to Earth immediately," Jake said. "If these things are still alive and planning to come back, every species in the galaxy is in danger." As they prepared to leave the dead planet, Kevin made one final discovery. Hidden in a sealed chamber was what appeared to be a recent message. The translation computer worked on it for several minutes before displaying the results. "The message is from the Vorthak," Kevin said with a trembling voice. "It's addressed to whoever found these records. It says, 'We have been watching. We have been waiting. The time of cleansing approaches. All inferior species will be removed so that perfection can reign. The galaxy will be pure once more.'" Lisa checked the date stamp on the message. This was recorded less than a year ago. "They're not just alive, they're actively monitoring the galaxy." Jake looked around at his team. They had come to this dead world looking for ancient history. Instead, they had found evidence of the greatest threat any civilization had ever faced. The Vorthak weren't just killers or conquerors. They were a species dedicated to the complete extinction of all other intelligent life. As their ship left the dead planet behind, Jake realized that everything had changed. Humanity and all the other species they knew were living on borrowed time. Somewhere in the darkness of the galactic core, an ancient evil was preparing to finish what it had started millions of years ago. The discovery would change everything, but first they had to convince people to believe them. The evidence was overwhelming, but the threat seemed too large and too terrible for most minds to accept. Jake just hoped they would have enough time to prepare for what was coming. The news from Captain Morrison's discovery spread through human space faster than anyone expected. Admiral Peter Kane sat in his office on Luna Base reading the report for the 5th time. Each time he hoped he had misunderstood something, but the evidence was clear and terrifying. Dr. Helen Ross knocked on his door and entered without waiting for permission. She had been working nonstop for 3 days, analyzing the data from the dead planet. Her usually neat appearance was disheveled, and her eyes were red from lack of sleep. "Admiral, we have a problem," she said, placing a datapad on his desk. "Our deep space sensors have been picking up massive energy readings from the galactic center. The signals match the technology signatures we found in the Vorthak records." Peter felt his stomach drop. "How massive are we talking about?" "The energy output suggests thousands of ships, each one larger than our biggest space stations." "They're not hiding anymore, Admiral. They're preparing for something big." Peter activated his communication system and called for an emergency meeting of the Human High Council. Within hours, representatives from every human colony and military command were connected through quantum communication links. President Maria Santos spoke first from her office on Earth. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are facing a threat unlike anything humanity has ever encountered. Dr. Ross, please explain what we're dealing with." Helen stood up and activated the holographic display in the center of the room. Images from the Vorthak records appeared, showing the destruction of countless worlds and civilizations. "The Vorthak Empire was the dominant force in this galaxy for over 10 million years, she began. "They didn't just conquer other species. They completely eliminated them. According to their own records, they destroyed over 1 million different intelligent civilizations." Gasps and murmurs filled the room as the representatives absorbed this information. General Christopher Lee, the head of human military forces, leaned forward in his chair. "What kind of technology are we talking about?" he asked. Helen switched the display to show Vorthak ship designs and weapon systems. "Their technology is at least 1,000 years ahead of ours, maybe more. A single Vorthak ship could destroy our entire fleet without taking significant damage." President Santos raised her hand for silence. "How many of them are there?" "That's the worst part," Helen replied. "Our sensors suggest they have been building their forces for millions of years. Conservative estimates put their fleet size at over 50,000 ships, with each ship capable of destroying entire planets." Colonel Ryan Mitchell, who commanded humanity's special forces, stood up. "What about the other species in the galaxy? The Altarians, the Centauri Federation, all our allies. Do they know about this threat?" Admiral Kane answered this question. "Ambassador Ellen Price has been trying to warn them for weeks. Most of them don't believe the threat is real. They think we're overreacting to ancient history. Ancient history that just sent out a recent message saying they're planning to start killing again." Dr. Ross added grimly. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. Finally, President Santos spoke again. What are our options? General Lee pulled up military readiness reports. Our combined fleet has about 3,000 ships of various sizes. Based on what we've learned about Vorthak technology, we would need at least 10 times that number to have any chance in a direct fight. Then we don't fight them directly, Colonel Mitchell said. We use guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run attacks, anything to slow them down. Dr. Ross shook her head. You don't understand. The Vorthak don't just win battles, they completely erase their enemies. They study each species for years, learning every weakness, every strength, every cultural and biological trait. Then they strike with perfect precision to cause total extinction. So what do you suggest we do? President Santos asked. Surrender without a fight? No, Admiral Kane said firmly. We prepare for war, but we do it differently than any war humanity has ever fought. We prepare to fight for the survival of every intelligent species in the galaxy. The discussion continued for hours as military leaders, scientists, and politicians tried to develop a strategy. The more they learned about the Vorthak, the more impossible their situation seemed. Ambassador Price joined the meeting through a communication link from the Altarian homeworld. Her face appeared on the main screen and she looked exhausted. How are the other species responding to our warnings? President Santos asked. Ellen's expression was grim. Most of them still don't believe us. The Altarians think we're trying to trick them into giving us more military technology. The Centauri Federation says the threat is too ancient to be real. Even when I show them the evidence, they find ways to dismiss it. What about the smaller species? The ones who might be more willing to listen? General Lee asked. A few are taking precautions, but not nearly enough. The problem is that the evidence seems too terrible to be true. These species have lived in peace for thousands of years. They can't imagine something like the Vorthak actually existing. Dr. Ross brought up another disturbing piece of information. According to the Vorthak records, this is exactly what they count on. They wait until civilizations become comfortable and peaceful. Then they strike when their victims are least prepared to fight back. Colonel Mitchell reviewed the defense plans that had been submitted by various human colonies. We have some advantages the Vorthak might not expect. Humanity has always been a warrior species. We've never had the luxury of true peace like some of our neighbors. That's not going to be enough, Admiral Kane said bluntly. Even if every human becomes a soldier, we're still outnumbered and outgunned by an impossible margin. President Santos made a decision that would change the course of human history. Then we prepare for the unthinkable. If conventional warfare won't work, we develop unconventional methods. Whatever it takes to protect not just humanity, but every innocent species in this galaxy. General Lee understood what she was suggesting. Are you authorizing research into weapons that violate our treaties and moral codes? I'm authorizing research into anything that might save innocent lives, Santos replied firmly. The Vorthak have already shown us what happens when evil is allowed to triumph. We won't let that happen again. The meeting ended with specific assignments for each branch of government and military. Humanity would begin the largest mobilization in their history, but it wouldn't be enough to match the Vorthak in conventional terms. As the representatives disconnected from the meeting, Dr. Ross remained behind with Admiral Kane. Peter, there's something else. Our long-range sensors detected movement in the galactic core 3 hours ago. Large formations of ships moving toward the outer rim. How long do we have? He asked. Based on their apparent speed and the distance they need to travel, maybe 6 months. Probably less. Admiral Kane looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, an ancient evil was awakening after millions of years of sleep. Humanity and their allies had perhaps half a year to prepare for a war that would determine whether intelligent life would continue to exist in the galaxy. The greatest challenge in human history was about to begin. And failure would mean more than just the end of humanity. It would mean the end of every dream, every hope, and every peaceful moment that any species had ever known. Time was running out, and the enemy was coming. Commander Alex Turner was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started screaming. He was stationed on Watchdog, humanity's most advanced monitoring station at the edge of explored space. For 3 years, his job had been to watch for any signs of Vorthak activity. Until this moment, the sensors had shown nothing but empty space. Now his screens were lighting up like a holiday display. Massive energy signatures were appearing all across the outer rim of the galaxy. Ships so large they registered as small moons were materializing from hyperspace in dozens of different star systems. "Get me Admiral Kane immediately," Alex shouted to his communications officer. "Emergency priority 1. While he waited for the connection, Alex watched in horror as the sensor displays updated in real time. The Vorthak weren't just returning with a few ships. They were coming back with a fleet that dwarfed anything anyone had imagined possible. "Admiral, they're here," Alex said when Kane's face appeared on screen. "The Vorthak fleet just emerged from hyperspace. Sir, there are thousands of them, and they're heading straight for inhabited systems." Admiral Kane's face went pale. "Which systems are they targeting first?" Alex checked his displays. "The Altarian home system is under immediate threat. They have 4 billion people there, and the Vorthak fleet will reach them in less than 8 hours. Send out the evacuation warnings immediately. Get every available ship to the Altarian system for emergency rescue operations." But it was already too late. Alex watched helplessly as the first Vorthak ships reached the outer planets of the Altarian system. What happened next would haunt him for the rest of his life. The Vorthak ships didn't bother with warnings or demands for surrender. They simply began destroying everything they encountered. Their weapons were unlike anything the current galaxy had ever seen. Entire planets didn't just explode, they simply ceased to exist, leaving behind nothing but empty space. "Admiral, the Altarian homeworld just... it's gone. 4 billion people and it's like the planet never existed." Kane's voice was barely a whisper. "How long did it take?" 6 hours. The entire system is dead. No survivors, no debris, no trace that anyone ever lived there." The pattern repeated across dozens of star systems over the following weeks. The Vorthak moved with mechanical precision, wiping out entire civilizations before moving to the next target. They showed no interest in taking prisoners or claiming territory. Their only goal was complete extermination. Captain Rachel Green commanded one of the few rescue ships that managed to save anyone during those first attacks. She had evacuated the last transport from a Centauri Federation colony, world just minutes before the Vorthak arrived. "We saved maybe 10,000 people out of a population of 50 million, she reported to command. "The survivors are in complete shock. They keep asking why this is happening and I don't know what to tell them." The stories the survivors told were beyond nightmares. The Vorthak didn't just kill quickly and move on. They seemed to enjoy causing terror and despair before delivering the final blow. They would destroy a planet's defenses first, then systematically eliminate escape routes while the population watched. Helplessly, Dr. Helen Ross studied the attack patterns from her research station on Earth. "They're following the same methods they used millions of years ago. First, they isolate their target, cutting off all communication and escape routes. Then they create maximum fear and desperation. Finally, they deliver complete annihilation. Within 3 months, 17 different intelligent species had been completely eliminated. Species that had existed for thousands of years were wiped from the galaxy as if they had never been born. The remaining civilizations finally began to understand what humanity had been trying to warn them about. Ambassador Ellen Price was evacuated from the Centauri Federation capital just hours before it was destroyed. The same officials who had dismissed her warnings were now begging for human help, but by then it was almost too late. "The galaxy is in complete panic," she reported from her rescue ship. "Every species that's still alive is preparing for evacuation, but there's nowhere to run. The Vorthak are everywhere." General Christopher Lee studied the tactical situation from his command center on Luna Base. The numbers were overwhelming. Humanity's combined fleet of 3,000 ships was facing a Vorthak force that seemed to have no limits. Every day, more enemy ships appeared from the galactic core. "We can't fight them conventionally," he reported to President Santos. "Every time one of our ships encounters a Vorthak vessel, we lose. Their technology is too advanced and their numbers are too great." But humanity had been preparing for this moment ever since Captain Morrison's discovery. In secret research facilities across human space, scientists and engineers had been working on projects that violated every treaty and moral principle their civilization had ever established. Dr. Benjamin Clark worked in the deepest levels of the Luna research, complex on weapons that no sane person would ever want to create. His team had been given unlimited resources and permission to explore technologies that could destroy not just ships or planets, but entire star systems. "We finished the prototype quantum destabilization device," he reported to Admiral Kane. "It can trigger a chain reaction that will collapse a star and destroy everything in the system. But Admiral, using this weapon means committing genocide on a scale that matches what the Vorthak are doing." Kane's response was immediate. "Doctor, The Vorthak have already committed genocide against 17 species in 3 months. If we don't stop them now, every intelligent being in the galaxy will be dead within a year. Build as many of those weapons as you can. The decision weighed heavily on everyone involved. Humanity had always prided itself on being protectors and explorers, not destroyers. But the Vorthak had forced them into a position where becoming monsters was the only way to save innocent lives. Colonel Ryan Mitchell began preparing special assault teams armed with the new weapons. These soldiers would have to be willing to sacrifice their own lives and sometimes entire star systems to stop the Vorthak advance. "We're not just fighting for humanity anymore," he told his troops. "We're fighting for every species that's still alive and every species that might exist in the future. The Vorthak want to turn the galaxy into a graveyard. We're going to stop them." Captain Nathan Scott volunteered to lead the first suicide mission with the quantum destabilization weapons. His fleet would intercept the next Vorthak force in the Kepler sector and trigger a star collapse that would destroy both the enemy and his own ships. "The mathematics are simple," Dr. Clark explained to the mission briefing. "One star system sacrifice will eliminate roughly 300 Vorthak ships. If we're willing to make that trade repeatedly, we can actually start reducing their numbers." The plan was horrifying in its simplicity. Humanity would fight the Vorthak using their own methods, complete destruction on a massive scale. But while the Vorthak destroyed civilizations for entertainment, humanity would do it for survival. The galaxy was about to witness something unprecedented in its long history. 2 species would fight a war where the stakes were nothing less than the continued existence of intelligent life. One side fought for the joy of causing death. The other fought for the desperate hope of preserving life. The ancient killers had awakened expecting to find the same weak prey they had hunted for millions of years. Instead, they were about to encounter humanity's greatest strength, the willingness to become anything necessary to protect others. The real war was about to begin. Admiral Patricia Hayes stood in the war room deep beneath Luna Base, staring at the authorization codes that would change humanity forever. Project Omega had been approved by every major government in human space. The orders were simple but horrifying. Stop the Vorthak by any means necessary. Dr. Benjamin Clark had finished constructing the weapons that would make humanity as feared as their ancient enemy. The quantum destabilization devices could collapse stars, destroy entire solar systems, and kill everything within light years of their detonation point. They were weapons of pure genocide, and humanity was about to use them. "Admiral, the first test device is ready," Benjamin reported from his laboratory. "But I need to stress again that once we use these weapons, there's no going back. We'll be crossing a line that no civilization should ever cross." Patricia looked at the latest casualty reports. 23 intelligent species had been completely eliminated in the past month. The Vorthak were accelerating their extermination campaign, destroying civilizations faster than anyone could evacuate them. Traditional morality had become a luxury that the galaxy could no longer afford. "Doctor, that line was crossed the moment the Vorthak decided that all other life should die. We're not becoming monsters by choice. We're becoming monsters by necessity." Captain Nathan Scott received his final briefing for the mission that would test humanity's new approach to warfare. His fleet of 50 ships would intercept the next Vorthak force in the Kepler sector. None of his ships were expected to survive, but if the plan worked, neither would 300 Vorthak vessels. "The quantum device needs to be placed at the exact center of the Kepler star," Benjamin explained to Nathan's crew. "Once activated, the star will collapse and explode simultaneously, creating a destruction field that extends across the entire system. Everything within that field will be completely annihilated." Nathan looked at his crew, men and women who had volunteered for a suicide mission to save people they had never met. "Any of you want to back out? This isn't the kind of war any of us signed up for." Lieutenant Colonel Susan Parker, his second-in-command, spoke for the entire crew. "Sir, my family lived on one of the colonies the Vorthak destroyed last month. Every person on this ship has lost someone to those monsters. We're not backing down." The Vorthak fleet arrived in the Kepler sector exactly when human intelligence predicted. 300 massive ships emerged from hyperspace, expecting to find another defenseless civilization to destroy. Instead, they found Nathan's small fleet waiting for them. The enemy didn't bother with communication or warnings. They simply began moving to destroy the human ships just as they had destroyed countless others. But this time, humanity had a different plan. Nathan's ship scattered throughout the system, forcing the Vorthak to spread out to hunt them down. While the enemy focused on destroying human vessels, a small team led by Susan Parker flew directly into the Kepler star using a specially shielded ship. "Devices in position," Susan reported as her ship dove deep into the star's core, activating quantum destabilization in 30 seconds. Nathan watched from his command ship as the Vorthak closed in from all directions. His fleet was outnumbered and outgunned, but they only needed to hold on for a few more moments. "All ships, this is Commander Scott. It's been an honor serving with you. Remember, we're not dying for nothing. We're dying so that others can live." The quantum device activated at the exact moment the last human ship was destroyed. For a split second, the Kepler star existed in two states simultaneously, collapsed and exploded. The resulting destruction was beyond anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The star system didn't just die. It was erased from existence, taking every Vorthak ship with it. Where there had once been planets, asteroids, and 300 enemy vessels, there was now only empty space and radiation. Admiral Hayes watched the results from her command center. The plan had worked perfectly, but the cost was devastating. 50 brave humans had given their lives and an entire star system had been sacrificed. Yet for the first time since the war began, a Vorthak fleet had been completely destroyed. "Send the report to all human commanders," she ordered. "The Kepler strategy is now operational. Any human fleet that encounters overwhelming Vorthak forces is authorized to trigger star collapse." The news spread through human space within hours. Humanity had found a way to fight back against the ancient enemy, but the method was as terrible as the threat itself. They would have to destroy entire star systems to stop the Vorthak advance. Captain Douglas Turner led the second suicide mission 3 days later in the Ross system. His fleet of 40 ships used the same tactics: scatter the enemy fleet, plant the quantum device, and trigger total system destruction. 250 Vorthak ships were eliminated at the cost of another star system. The Vorthak, for the first time in millions of years, began to experience something they had never felt before: fear. The primitive species they had planned to exterminate was fighting back with weapons that matched their own destructive power. Colonel Ryan Mitchell analyzed the enemy's response to humanity's new tactics. "They're changing their behavior patterns. Instead of spreading out to hunt individual ships, they're staying in tight formations. They're learning to fear us." Dr. Helen Ross studied the psychological profiles of Vorthak survivors from destroyed fleets. The few enemy ships that escaped the star collapses were broadcasting something that had never been heard before: Vorthak distress calls. "They're actually asking for help," she reported with amazement. "For millions of years, they've been the ultimate predators. Now they're experiencing what it feels like to be prey." The war entered a new phase as humanity refined their star-killing tactics. Captain Kevin Walsh developed formation strategies that could force larger Vorthak fleets into positions where multiple stars could be collapsed simultaneously. Captain Amy Brown created navigation techniques that allowed human ships to trigger star collapses while still escaping the destruction field. But the most significant change was in humanity itself. The species that had once explored the galaxy with wonder and hope was transforming into something darker and more efficient. They were becoming the thing they had always feared: perfect killers. "General Christopher," Lee addressed the human military commanders from his headquarters on Mars. "The Vorthak have been the galaxy's apex predator for 10 million years. They've never faced an enemy willing to match their brutality. But humanity didn't evolve in an empty galaxy. We evolved on a world where everything was dangerous. We learned to survive by becoming more dangerous than our environment." The message was clear to every human soldier. They were no longer fighting to win territory or gain resources. They were fighting to prove that humanity could be more ruthless and efficient than the galaxy's most successful killers. The Vorthak had made a critical error when they chose to threaten not just humanity, but every innocent species in the galaxy. They had awakened something in humans that had been sleeping since the days when their ancestors fought saber-toothed cats and dire wolves. Humanity was remembering how to be apex predators, and they were very good at it. The ancient enemy was about to learn that in a galaxy full of wonders and terrors, nothing was more dangerous than humans who had been pushed too far. Fleet Admiral Douglas Turner commanded the largest military force in human history as it prepared for the final assault on the galactic core. 18 months of brutal warfare had led to this moment. Humanity had stripped entire star systems of resources to build weapons that violated every moral principle their civilization had once held sacred. The transformation was complete. The species that had once sent explorers to study alien flowers and document beautiful nebulae had become the galaxy's most efficient killers. They had learned to fight the Vorthak using methods that surpassed even the ancient empire's cruelty. "Final count, Admiral," reported Captain Lisa Miller from the command ship Retribution. "We have 8,000 ships armed with quantum destabilization devices. Each ship carries enough firepower to destroy multiple star systems. Our engineers estimate we can eliminate the entire galactic core if necessary." Douglas looked at the tactical displays showing the Vorthak's final stronghold. The ancient enemy had retreated to the densest part of the galaxy, where millions of stars clustered together in space. They thought the dense stellar environment would protect them from humanity's star-killing weapons. They were wrong. "Begin the final approach," Douglas ordered. "All ships maintain battle formation. Remember, we're not here to conquer territory or take prisoners. We're here to erase the Vorthak from existence completely." Dr. Catherine Miller monitored the battle from her position aboard the command vessel. She had spent the last year developing tracking systems that could detect every Vorthak ship, station, and base. Her job was to ensure that nothing escaped the coming destruction. "Admiral, our sensors are detecting massive energy buildups throughout the galactic core. The Vorthak are preparing for their last stand." The enemy had spent millions of years building their final fortress in the galactic core. Thousands of artificial worlds orbited specially modified stars that provided unimaginable amounts of energy. Their fleet numbered in the tens of thousands, and their technology remained superior to anything humanity possessed. But the Vorthak had made a fatal mistake. They had taught humanity that total war meant exactly that, total destruction of the enemy. Now their students were about to graduate by proving they had learned the lesson better than their teachers. Commander Joseph Wright led the advanced scout force that penetrated the outer defenses of the galactic core. His ships were equipped with new stealth technology developed specifically for this mission. They needed to map every Vorthak position before the main assault began. "Admiral, I'm transmitting detailed scans of the enemy positions," Joseph reported. "There are definitely survivors from all the fleets we've destroyed over the past year. They've gathered everything they have left for this final battle." "How many are we looking at?" Douglas asked. "Conservative estimate puts their fleet at 15,000 ships. They also have orbital fortresses around every major star in this region. Sir, they're not planning to retreat again. This is where they make their final stand." The Vorthak had finally realized what humanity had become. The primitive species they had planned to exterminate had evolved into something more dangerous than they were. For the first time in their ancient history, the Vorthak were facing extinction themselves. Admiral Turner received a transmission from the enemy flagship. It was the first direct communication the Vorthak had attempted since the war began. The message appeared on his screen, translated by computers that had learned their language from captured records. "Humans of Earth," the message began. "We propose a cessation of hostilities. The galaxy is large enough for both our species to coexist. We will withdraw to the galactic core and never again venture into the regions you claim as your own." Douglas stared at the message for a long moment before responding. His reply was transmitted on all frequencies in every known language, ensuring that any surviving species in the galaxy would hear humanity's answer. "You had 10 million years to learn coexistence. Instead, you chose to make genocide into a game. You eliminated over 1 million intelligent species and kept trophies of their destruction. Now you offer to share a galaxy that you tried to empty of all life except your own." He paused, looking around the bridge at his officers. Each of them had lost friends, family, or entire homeworlds to the Vorthak extermination campaign. "Our answer is no. We are not here to coexist with you. We are not here to make treaties or establish boundaries. We are here to erase you from existence, just as you erased so many others. You will be forgotten, and the galaxy will be better for it." The final battle began immediately after Douglas sent his response. Thousands of ships from both sides engaged in combat across hundreds of star systems simultaneously. But this was not a battle for territory or resources. It was a race to see which species could eliminate the other more completely. The Vorthak fought with desperate efficiency, using every advantage their superior technology provided. Their ships were faster, stronger, and better armed than anything humanity possessed. In individual combat, they won almost every engagement. But humanity had learned something the Vorthak never understood. Sometimes winning meant being willing to lose everything in the process. Captain Nathan Rogers commanded a squadron of ships armed with the most powerful quantum devices ever created. His mission was to penetrate the heart of the galactic core and trigger a chain reaction that would destroy multiple star systems simultaneously. Beginning final approach to the core cluster, he reported. Enemy resistance is heavy, but we're maintaining course. Estimated time to target is 47 minutes. Vorthak ships swarmed around Nathan's squadron like angry insects, destroying human vessels one by one. But each destroyed ship brought the survivors closer to their target. The quantum devices didn't require large fleets to deploy. They only needed one ship to reach the target zone. "Sir, we're down to just 3 ships," reported his weapons officer. "But we're almost in position." "Continue the mission," Nathan ordered. "Even if we're the last ship in the squadron, we complete the mission." All across the galactic core, similar scenes played out as human forces sacrificed themselves to position their ultimate weapons. Star after star began to collapse as quantum devices activated throughout the Vorthak stronghold. Dr. Miller watched from the command ship as entire regions of the galactic core disappeared into artificial black holes. "Admiral, the chain reactions are working better than we predicted. Each collapsed star is triggering the collapse of nearby stars. We're looking at a cascade effect that could destroy this entire region of space." The Vorthak finally understood what humanity intended. They weren't just planning to win the battle, they were planning to destroy the entire galactic core to ensure no Vorthak could ever escape or rebuild. Desperate transmissions flooded the communication channels as the ancient enemy begged for mercy. For the first time in their existence, the Vorthak were experiencing the terror they had inflicted on countless other species. "Please," came a transmission from the Vorthak command ship. "We surrender completely. We will submit to any terms you dictate. Just stop the destruction." Commander Wright led the final assault team that penetrated the enemy flagship. His soldiers fought their way through corridors filled with desperate Vorthak warriors, reaching the command center where the ancient empire's leaders waited. The Vorthak commanders were nothing like what humanity had expected. Instead of proud warriors accepting defeat with honor, they found cowering beings begging for their lives. The galaxy's greatest predators had been reduced to terrified prey. "You want mercy?" Joseph asked the Vorthak leader. "How much mercy did you show the children of the species you exterminated? How much mercy did you show the artists and dreamers and peaceful farmers you murdered for entertainment?" The final quantum device was activated in the exact center of the galactic core. The chain reaction that followed was visible from thousands of light years away, as millions of stars collapsed simultaneously, creating a void in space where the Vorthak Empire had once existed. When the destruction finally ended, nothing remained of the ancient enemy. No ships, no stations, no worlds, no survivors. The Vorthak had been erased as completely as if they had never existed. Their technology, their records, their very memory was systematically destroyed by human forces. Admiral Turner transmitted the final report to Earth 6 months later. "The Vorthak Empire has been completely eliminated. All enemy forces destroyed, all enemy territory occupied or destroyed, all enemy records confiscated or eliminated. The threat to galactic civilization has been permanently removed. The war was over, but humanity had paid a terrible price for victory. They had saved the galaxy by becoming something almost as frightening as the enemy they had destroyed. The species that had once explored space with wonder and curiosity had proven they could be more ruthless than the galaxy's most successful killers." Years later, Ambassador Carol Johnson would address the reformed Galactic Council with words that would be remembered for generations. "We did not want to become what we became. We did not choose to be executioners. But when faced with an enemy that threatened all intelligent life, we made the choice that had to be made. We became the darkness so that others could remain in the light." The Vorthak were gone, but the galaxy would never forget what humanity was capable of when